can do in this moment. If my ancestors as slaves can lead the greatest general strike in the history of this country, taking it to the ultra-rich and big corporations, we can do the same today.
This is Steve Zeltzer with Workweek, and today is No King's Day, and millions of people marched in the United States, in Chicago, New York, throughout the South, and also in Los Angeles. And we're joined today by Cliff Smith. He's business manager of Roofers Local 36 in Los Angeles. Welcome to our show, Cliff.
Hi.
So, Cliff, you've been supporting the idea of a workers' party, been supporting the idea of a labor action, a general strike. Today in Chicago, Brandon Johnson, the mayor of Chicago, actually called for a national general strike against the fascist attacks in Chicago. Is this a sign that things are beginning to change, that people realize that there has to be mass action of the working class to deal with this government, these fascist attacks?
Well, it can only be seen as a sign for the mayor of the third largest city in the country that's under direct threat from not just Trump's ICE secret police agents, but the military. For him to call for a nationwide general strike puts him at the front of the entire social movement. It puts him in front of the labor movement. It puts him in front of any large-scale mass organization. And credit where it's due. We salute Mayor Johnson for putting forward this call today.
And there was a rally today in Los Angeles. What happened there? Los Angeles as well has been under attack by these gangs, terrorizing the immigrants, raiding neighborhoods, and threatening people.
It was a spirited rally. It had a mass turnout. It has its limitations, due to the leadership and the kind of vague demands. But it's important that people stand up and come out into the streets and protest. So, in general, it's a statement against Trump's advances toward fascism. It's a statement toward the defense of democracy, and it needs to be supported.
And the issue of healthcare in California, where you're from, I'm from as well, 3.4 million people will lose their Medicaid. And nationally, 500,000 healthcare workers are going to lose their jobs as a result of these cutbacks. It seems like for working people in this country, this is going to be a life and death struggle, whether or not they even get health care.
Well, right. And so, we see that this shutdown of the federal government, which is initiated by the Republican administration who controls every branch, it's a positive thing that the Democrats are drawing the line to not cave in as they did in March. Democratic Party leaders like Chuck Schumer, they crossed the line and gave in earlier this year, and it's because of the pressure from the working class, from the masses, from the rank and file average working people, that even the top levels of the Democratic Party recognizes that it's time to draw a hard line against Trump. And the funding for the healthcare subsidies is one of the pivotal conflicts in that struggle. And
yet in California, where the Democrats have a majority in the legislature, a supermajority, you have a Democratic governor. While they're pushing Prop 50, there are no demands for the legislature to tax the billionaires in California, to make them pay for healthcare, education, housing, and the benefits they're going to get from Trump's tax cuts to going to the wealthy in this country. Couldn't the Democrats do that if they really represented working people?
Sure. And of course they don't. And, these are the hypocrisies and failures of the Democratic Party, which, as you mentioned earlier, why we must build a political organization, a political party that represents the interests of working class people, that can fight for a people's democracy and not a paper democracy. The Democratic Party is compromised. It's completely sold out and corrupted. But to the extent that it will take on any fight against fascism, we need to make sure that fascism is always isolated.
And has there been a discussion of fascism? Because although Brandon Johnson and my union, the CWA, They talk about authoritarianism and fascism. There doesn't seem to be any real discussion, education in the labor movement about what fascism is.
I would say that there's no discussion about it. The kind of think tank positions of the labor movement, they use the term that you mentioned, authoritarianism, which I think is vague, it's abstract, and it's malleable. It can be used against the labor movement. The argument in the Janus case of public employee unions was that unions are authoritarian by demanding that the workers have to be part of the union and have to have their dues deducted from their paychecks. Um, the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, was accused of being authoritarian. The investigations and impeachments of Donald Trump were accused of being authoritarian overreach. So, that's a kind of a favorite accusation by the far right, by the groups like the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys, that Joe Biden, that Kamala Harris, that the AFL-CIO, that these are authoritarian organizations. And so, ultimately, the term really means anything that anybody wants it to mean. And so it's important that we talk about fascism because it has a historical and material scientific definition of the ultimate extension of capitalism in its failure, the absolute direct rule of force by terror of the capitalist ruling class, whereas authoritarianism just means we don't like authority, which can be used by anybody.
And is that an issue really in this No King's Day? Because even if you get rid of Trump, don't you still have a system of capitalism and techno-fascism and people who really want to rule without any constitution, without any democratic rights?
Clearly, and it could be worse than even Trump. So Trump as an individual person is not the absolute cause of the circumstances that we're in, the conditions we're in. It's the failures of and crisis of the capitalist system that they're trying to resolve their internal contradictions on the backs of working people, and the only way that they can do that is by direct force. The working people are not going to support austerity. We're not going to support trillions of dollars of giveaways to the rich people, to the ruling class. We're not going to support cutting our medical coverage, our food assistance for poor people. We're not going to support cuts to infrastructure projects and investment that is desperately needed in this country. And so Trump and his MAGA Republicans and the people that finance that movement, they have to resort to the direct rule of force. Unfortunately, the labor movement is so compromised and conciliatory toward capitalists and capitalism that they won't talk about fascism. They just use these kind of vague and abstract terms like authoritarianism, which again, will be thrown back in their faces.
And the issue of the genocide, U.S. supported genocide, support of Israel, and what's going on in Gaza and the West Bank, it seems like the AFL-CIO has been completely silent. They won't even say it's a genocide. Has there been debate in the labor movement in Los Angeles about taking action against the genocide, about a labor blockade? The Palestinian unions have called for a labor blockade. Unions in Europe and Italy, the dock workers and others are taking action. It seems like American workers should be taking similar action.
There's been no meaningful deliberation in the labor movement about standing up for the rights of the Palestinian people to self-determination, to the end of Zionist imperialism. The California Labor Federation passed a paper resolution supporting Palestinian people, but as far as taking matters into our own hands as labor, there's absolutely no conversation in that regard. And shame on the labor movement, shame on the AFL-CIO.
And there's also the danger of an imminent invasion of Venezuela. And as you know, the AFL-CIO Solidarity Center has been involved in supporting attempted coups in Venezuela. The Solidarity Center was getting $70 million a year from the National Endowment for Democracy, USAID. I mean, this whole issue of the international role of the AFL-CIO, is that important for workers to understand in this struggle to defend, for example, Venezuela and oppose support for U.S. military interventions?
Well, and this is again goes to the heart of the compromised position of the AFL-CIO is that it claims to support workers, but only the workers that it prefers to support at the expense of the rest of the world's working class. And workers are workers wherever we are, wherever we come from. Workers in Venezuela have the same interests as workers in Los Angeles or in Chicago or anywhere else in the United States. And if the AFL-CIO is going to even pretend to be a voice for working people, it has to support the interests of working people internationally. And of course, as you're saying, it has taken the opposite positions. It has taken sides with the ruling class of imperialism against working people in countries like Venezuela and elsewhere.
And another issue facing workers, particularly in port cities like Los Angeles, is the trade war and the growing tariffs. Has that affected the workers in Los Angeles? And what are the unions doing about this trade war? Because it seems like it's hurting working people on all sides of the border, Mexico, Canada, China, blaming China for the trade war. I mean, it seems like this escalating trade war could lead to a depression.
Well, and that's very possible, and it could happen sooner than I think the AFL-CIO wants to imagine. There's been, some paper discussion, some social media statements, but nothing along the lines of educating rank and file workers, of trying to prepare for mobilization to stand up against these international economic policies based on exploitation, based on trying to export the problems of the United States economy onto other countries, which falls onto the shoulders of working people in those countries. The AFL-CIO has been entirely complicit with the ruling class in the United States in international affairs.
And Chris Smalls has called, along with other unions, including the San Diego Labor Council and some SEIU locals, for a protest at the AFL-CIO on October the 24th, demanding that the AFL-CIO support a labor blockade of Israel and also oppose the genocide. There's going to be an action in San Francisco, the San Francisco Labor Council. Uh, what do you think about taking action, demanding action by the unions, for the unions to really take a stand on these issues?
Well, ultimately, it's going to fall into the hands of rank and file workers, union members to push the leadership or to push the leadership aside. I'm not aware of the announcement for a specific date and a specific action that you mentioned. I'd be happy to learn about it. Um, I think I heard you say the San Diego Labor Federation
Is
is
supporting
supporting.
it, is endorsing it, yes.
Yeah, I would like to see that.
Okay. And you have for a long time been talking about a workers' party, a labor party. What would a workers' party do at this point in this kind of struggle, if there was one?
Well, I mean, the first thing is the average rank and file workers, both in the labor movement and the majority of workers, which are not represented by a labor union, need to be educated and organized. Um, the only way we're going to solve the problems that we're facing, and we can see that these problems are only going to be exacerbated and get worse in the near future, even is that workers, as you're saying, need to be able to take direct action, need to be able to seize hold of pressure points in the economy, the ports being one of those, shipping being one of those, and there's no organization that's in place to be able to provide that leadership, to provide that education and mobilization. We must have a political organization and a political party that represents the interests of working class people. The Democratic Party will never solve our problems.
Well, I want to thank you very much for joining us. We've been talking with Cliff Smith, business manager of Roofers Local 36 in Los Angeles and a longtime supporter of a workers' party. So thanks for joining us.
My pleasure, Steve. Thank you so much.